So first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast here in Foxboro as the Patriots just wrapped up day 11 of training camp. A very slow practice as they get ready for tomorrow's joint practice against the Commanders. So instead of doing what we normally do and running through what happened at practice, we'll give a couple quick and dirty observations off the top, and then we will preview tomorrow's practice against the Commanders. Taylor put together 5 matchups he wants to watch, and of course, we'll talk about the quarterbacks as well, the number 2 and number 3 pick from last year, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, going against each other here in Foxboro on Wednesday. But before we get to it, Taylor, a couple things depth chart-wise. Again, today's practice, nothing really happened. They were in here in no helmets, shorts, T-shirts, basically just getting ready for Wednesday. But what did you notice depth chart-wise and just overall with attendance from today's practice on Tuesday?
Yeah, so Carlton Davis was actually here at practice. I wouldn't expect him to participate like Mike Vrabel told us he wasn't going to practice. I think what he meant was he's not going to do anything full speed or even really, like this wasn't even half speed. This was quite literally a walkthrough. So Carlton Davis was out here. Pretty cool. We saw Alex Austin as the main guy opposite him. Marcus Jones obviously in the slot. DJ James also got some opportunities. Other depth chart notes, Javon Baker was with the top offense. Yep. The offense is split in half. It was Javon Baker on one field, Jalen Polk on another. We talked yesterday about this wide receiver room shakes out a certain way. Which of those young guys might have the edge? I mentioned it's probably Javon Baker.
Now, yeah.
Because while he does have inconsistencies, I think he still needs to lock in, and Jalen Polk's been a bit more consistent in his time. Javon Baker's flashes have been significant, so I feel like that should give him an edge. And he is going to have every opportunity, I think, to win himself a roster spot. Just needs to take that bull by the horns. Also in the trenches, we saw that Demontre Jacobs and Marcus Bryant. Yesterday, we saw Trey Jacobs at left tackle and Bryant at right tackle, which was a bit abnormal for them. Today, it seemed like they flipped back again, but Morgan Moses left early in practice, and what happened as a result was it looked like Demontre Jacobs was the first guy up, but also Marcus Bryant was rotating in there as well. So still an open competition at right tackle. And then Vidarian Lowe, who I think is going to be the swing tackle when all is said and done. We've already seen he has spot starter ability, even if I think he's better on the left side. Spent some time on the right side today as well, so that just kind of gives you another hint that, and he was also, there was only 2 sets of lines, but the fact that Vidarian was playing may give you a little bit of insight into how they view him, and the fact that he isn't just a left tackle in the system, he is probably a swing.
Putting a bow on today's practice, just in general for the attendance, Christian Gonzalez, Marcellus Dial, who left yesterday's practice with a what looked to be a lower leg injury, Caleb on Chason, Jelani Tavai, tight end Tyler Davis, offensive lineman City So, defensive lineman Jaquelin Roy, Caden Wallace, Kendrick Bourne, and Morgan Moses wrapped up the absences today. Yeah, a tough one again.
That's it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens moving forward as they get ready for tomorrow's practice against the Commanders, which is what we're going to preview now. We've done 11 practices of Patriots on Patriots now. A real NFL team gets to come in, and you get to see how these guys stack up. So I mentioned the quarterbacks. I want to get your take on both of these guys. What are you watching for from Drake May against a new opponent for the first time under Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels? And then on the flip side, Jayden Daniels, obviously Rookie of the Year last year, brings his team to the NFC Championship game. He is already considered between a top 5 and top 10 quarterback in this league. What do you want to see from the Patriots on defense against a guy of that caliber to show that they're up to speed and ready for this season?
Start with our guy, Drake May. The first thing is I want to see his decision-making continue to impress. I tweeted about it last night. It has been incredible to watch Drake May's maturation continue. Last year, obviously, turnovers were a very big issue for him. He's addressed it ad nauseum. But you also understood as a first-year player without a lot around him, he did pretty much as much as he could, and the mistakes were things you could very much understand. There weren't a lot of egregious repeat errors. And now this year under Josh McDaniels, an offensive coordinator who puts such a premium on protecting the football, on getting to your outlets, and just living to fight another day, we've seen Drake May do that consistently. And also the risk-reward of knowing, hey, I like my matchup, whether it's Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, Demario Douglas on a crosser, or Stephon Diggs. I'm going to go to those guys if I like the matchup, but if I don't, I'm going to try to either hit my outlet or keep my eyes downfield if I have protection. And when we've seen him leave the pocket, he does a great job of trying to make sure he's a thrower and not a runner until he absolutely has to be. So continue to see that. I also want to see more consistent accuracy. Now, one day it's not going to make any kind of world of difference, but we have seen in almost every practice, there's been some spray misses from Drake that you just don't want to see in your franchise quarterback. So I'd like to just see a step in the right direction tomorrow against what's probably going to be some tight coverage from this Commander's secondary in a couple of spots at least. Now when it comes to Jayden Daniels, We already know that this is one of the best deep ball throwers, along with Drake May, in the NFL, and he's got the artillery to do it. Now, Terry McLaurin may not be here, so we'll see how that works exactly. But we know Jaden Daniels is going to put the ball where only his guys can get it. The Patriots, it's going to be their job to make sure they do not give him a lot of open windows, and even if his receivers do get their hands on some deep passes, make sure you remain competitive and fight to the end of the play, try to dislodge those, as we've seen the Patriots defensive backs do pretty much throughout this training camp. Another thing, Jabril Peppers also mentioned this, the mobility of a Jaden Daniels. The deep ball is one thing. You also got to keep him in the pocket. It kind of sounds like I'm scouting Drake May a little bit, doesn't it? But you want to make sure that Jaden Daniels, guy who can crush you with his legs, not just as a scrambler like Drake May, but he's an even better designed runner than a Drake May. So whether it's the run defense or the pass rush, you got to make sure that you don't let Jaden Daniels kill you with his legs. This is going to be a great test for them in two of the most dangerous aspects of modern quarterback play.
It's gonna be fun, Taylor, and that's why we mentioned the quarterbacks off the top because those are all obviously the the marquee guys that we want to watch tomorrow. But let's get into some matchups because we actually have real football tomorrow to watch. It's going to be exciting. Number one on your list, or 5 down. I don't think they're in order, but here's all 5.
No order.
No order. I'll give you the first one. Patriots edge rushers versus Laramie Tunsil, who ends up with Washington this year after being traded from the Houston Texans. They're clearly doing what all they can to protect Jaden Daniels. Callahan Chason, Keon White up against that guy. What do you want to see from those guys? What do you want to see how they can attack a guy like Tunsil, and what are you watching in the trenches overall there?
I specified Keon White and Callahan Chason because those are usually the guys that line up on the right edge where the left tackle is. Like when you hear about Will Campbell, it's usually him versus White or Chason. So going to get that against Laramie Tunsil. Now, Callahan Chason hasn't participated in the last 2 days, which makes me think he's probably not going to be ready for tomorrow. So I just wanted to throw him in just in case. But Keon White, this will be a great test for the young and very athletic and talented player because we've seen him give Will Campbell the work, but the Patriots tackle depth, as we've said in other shows, is pretty shoddy, and Will Campbell is clearly their most talented player, even if Morgan Moses may be the best because of his experience. So I want to see what Laramie Tunsil, an older veteran but still one of the best left tackles in the league, is able to do against a Keon White, where Keon's been talking about Mike Smith, how he's helped with his approach. He has a plan when he rushes now, when he's a little bit more technically refined, at least when you were looking at it from the raw eyes over on the sideline.
Sure.
So how do those developments that Keon White has made match up with Laramie Tunsil and his already proven skill set? That's going to be a blast, and it's going to be a good barometer. We're going to get a lot of good barometers, 100%. But that'll be a great one for Keon.
I'm glad you mentioned the barometer because when you go from Keon having success in these last 2 weeks against a guy like Will Campbell, who has given him the business a few times, but overall Keon looks to be winning. You got to remember, 4th overall pick, a guy who's still learning the game, Laramie Tunsil, one of the best left tackles in football we've seen over the last decade. So it'll be fun to see how he can match up against a guy like that. Number 2, Taylor, you have the Patriots outside wide receivers versus Marshawn Lattimore. What are you looking for those guys and how they can win against one of the premier corners in the league?
Marshawn, like you said, another player who's one of the absolute best at his position. The main guy I'm going to be looking at here is Kayshon Boutte, because Lattimore, he's the guy who's going to follow your X receiver, that guy that you like to isolate. That's mostly been Kayshon Boutte and the guy that you expect to have a lot of those matchups. Boutte talked today about how he feels like he's mature. He came to camp in shape, something he maybe didn't do as much in years prior. Really leaned into that physicality in his game. Been a very common presence in the weight room. I almost forgot what that was called because I ain't never seen a weight room myself. But that part of his game, the growth that he's made, I can't wait to see it against. We saw some flashes against Gonzo. Right. Obviously, he got hurt, and Kayshon's had the ability to go against some more depth players. Now we get to see him against another very physical player in Marshawn Lattimore. I'd throw Kyle Williams in there as well, where we kind of expect that Williams is going to struggle against more physical corners, but they got to get their hands on him first.
Right.
So can Kyle Williams work his magic that we've already seen against press coverage to make sure that Lattimore isn't able to get his hands on him and maybe have some success? He's not going to dominate against a guy like Lattimore, but I want to see that competitiveness. And I'll throw Stephon Diggs in there as well. I don't know how often they're going to get matched up, but those are two guys who've been in the league for a long time and are at the top of their games when it comes to technical refinement. So Stephon Diggs' route running versus Marshawn Lattimore's ability in man coverage. If we do see that matchup, hopefully it at least pops up in one-on-ones. I'm excited to see who comes out on top.
I was going to say, I can't wait to watch Diggs against another opponent here because he's been doing it against the Patriots the last couple weeks, and we've seen some ups and downs from number 8 as he's come in here and tried to work his magic with Drake May. But we go from the outside to the inside, where Pop Douglas, Efton Chisholm, two guys that we've talked about a lot on this show and Patriots fans are excited about, against Mike Sanristel. Everett kid, local guy, goes to Michigan, drafted by the Commanders, and he's been a star in the slot for them the last couple of seasons. What do you want to see from those guys against one of the premier inside corners in all of football as well?
Yeah, Mike Sanderson, I think, is a very talented slot defender, but he's someone where he's a little bit more physical. I don't think he's quite as twitchy as Demario Douglas. So This is a matchup that I expect Demario Douglas to dominate, not just because Sanderson is only going to be in his second season, but again, I think that Demario Douglas, with his quickness and his speed, I don't think we give Pop nearly enough credit for the fact that he's like a mid-4-4s guy. Like, he's not slow.
Right.
And again, Sanderson is still a very good athlete, but I think that Demario Douglas should have the edge. Looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And Efton Chisholm, a younger guy who has impressed, but the past couple of days that they've been competitive, he has had inconsistencies and maybe not been able to take full advantage of some opportunities. So this is going to be a prime example. Another young player. I think that's maybe a skill set where you can see Efton Chisholm winning with his quickness, but he doesn't have quite the explosiveness as a Pop. So just to see him against another opponent, we haven't even really seen Chisholm against like a Marcus Jones,
right?
Because he's been buried on the depth chart. But in one-on-ones, hopefully he does get the opportunity to show what he can do against a starting caliber player.
Couple more matchups here to preview, but before we do, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. We'll be right back. CLNS Media is powered by Prize Picks, the best place to get in on the action, even throughout the summer. There is still baseball, there's women's basketball, and Taylor, we are right on the cusp of football season. There will be preseason games loaded up on Prize Picks, so if you want to get in on the action, head over to Prize Picks. Use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Shout out Prize Picks. Head over there. Use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Red Sox are rolling right now. Get in on the action with our friends over at Prize Picks. All right, Taylor. Fourth matchup here, we have the Patriots interior offensive line against a guy in Daron Payne, who we keep talking about it, but really all these guys are some of the premier players at their positions, especially on the defensive side of the ball for Washington. So what are you looking at from the interior guys like Mike Onwenu, Jared Wilson, against a guy in Payne, but also just getting more NFL reps against another team that's not just the Pats?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I didn't mention Garrett Bradbury here because I don't think there's a whole lot we're going to learn. Like, we know what Garrett Bradbury is. You do not want Daron Payne one-on-one against him. Bradbury more of a run blocker. But Mike Onwenu has been stellar, I think, in pass protection this camp. When he lines up against Christian Barmore and Milt Williams, it doesn't matter. He is usually in control. I haven't with my own eyes seen him lose a rep, so I'm excited to see what he can do against a great test because, like we've mentioned in some of our earlier pods, Mike Onwenu is getting paid very handsomely, whether he's a guard or a tackle. So you need him to live up to the standard of being one of the best guards in the NFL, at the very least as a pass blocker. Obviously, we also know what he can do as a run blocker there. And then Jared Wilson, a guy who has looked very good to us as well. Not been perfect by any means, but by far impressive, been one of the best rookies for 100%. The Patriots against a Daron Payne where he's bigger, he's stronger, and he's a guy who has more experience. Even if, Jared Wilson is more athletic, that is not going to be easy. So Jared Wilson's looked good against Barmore. He's looked good against Milton Williams. How is he going to look against someone that he hasn't practiced against?
You mentioned impressive rookies, so I want to hit the fifth and final matchup we hear today, and it's Will Campbell, the tackle, as well as obviously Morgan Moses on the other side if he does end up participating. I think he will. I feel like they're ramping him up to get some, real game reps like they are tomorrow. Against guys like Von Miller, who was just signed by Washington this offseason, and also old friend Dietrich Wise Jr. He comes back, as well as Jonathan Jones, so that'll be a storyline in itself, seeing some of these guys return to Foxboro. But what are you looking for from Campbell? What are you looking for from Morgan Moses, and how they can help protect the edge against this front and keep Drake May healthy?
So the biggest thing with Moses...
Not healthy. I shouldn't say healthy. He's going to be in a red jersey. They're not going to hit him, but keep Drake May protected against the Commanders.
Well, for Morgan Moses, the only thing is I want to see how he deals with Von Miller's explosiveness, that ghost move, and his ability to win the edge. That's really been the one area for Morgan Moses where I have been worried. Like, Harold Landry's had some pretty good reps against him. Harold Landry is someone who Keon White described as a really fast player. Von Miller is obviously not prime Von Miller, but he's not a guy you can sleep on either. So just see how those matchup of aging veterans kind of works out. But with Will Campbell specifically, again, two guys he hasn't faced, but Von Miller, all the experience and the tools in his box, I'd like to see how Will Campbell's able to just learn.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Will Campbell's going to have a good day against these guys, but hopefully we get some opportunity to ask him what he was able to glean from a Von Miller who is so technically savvy. And Dietrich Wise specifically, yes, he's also savvy, but the whole thing with Will Campbell is the arm length. Is it the biggest deal in the world? No, but as I keep saying, it is significant. Dietrich Wise basically has swords for hands. It's why he did the whole saber celebration every time he gets the sack. Dude's got long arms, massive hands. That's going to be a challenge for Will Campbell. I don't think that's something necessarily the Patriots have on this roster where there's a guy who you're like, oh, lengthwise, he's genuinely terrifying. Dietrich is that guy, even if he's not super explosive, and Dietrich understands how to use those abilities while minimizing his lack of explosiveness. So just to see see how those two different skill sets, Campbell's able to adapt and thrive, hopefully against those, but also if he struggles, keep saying this, do not hit the alarm bell. That is going to happen. It's going to be like midway through the season, I'll probably be saying, like, we got to calm down. But just to see how the rookie's able to adapt and, again, finish practice if he is having some early struggles or how that goes.
The players keep getting asked, Taylor, how excited are you to have another team come in here and practice against another jersey and trying to hit another body? How excited,
that time of the year.
How excited are you to have another team in here and not just keep talking about the Patriots on Patriots ad nauseum?
I mean, I'm psyched because as fun as it is to try to process two different sides of the ball doing things at the exact same time, it's going to be really nice with just black jerseys and red jerseys, and I'll have a decent, or brown or whatever, or blue.
Whatever
Jeez
they wear,
Louise.
whatever we wear.
And I'll have a decent understanding of what the hell's going on. But yeah, it's going to be easier for my eyes, and also it's going to be one step closer to real football, which, that's why we're here.
Going to be super fun. Again, Patriots welcoming the Commanders into Foxboro tomorrow. 10 a.m., Mike Vrabel press conference, 10:15, Patriots Commanders practice. It'll be high energy, high excitement. We will have a recap after as well, so keep it here on Patriots Press Pass for all of it. It's going to be fun. And tune in. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone.